etc. So, without further ado, Marten, would you like to kick off?
Yes, one question. How much time do you have?
45 minutes.
Well, won't need that.
That's fine. That's good. Shorter is better.
Okay, cool. So if you have any questions, just kick in, right? I'm not prepared for talking in a monologue way for 45 minutes. I think I've never done in my whole life. So basically, so now let me share my screen. I prepared some slides.
Excellent.
Should actually see them. Do you see them?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So I'm not so used with that. Should be full time.
Yes,
size,
full
right?
screen.
Okay. Yeah, it's actually, as Ellen mentioned, it's a story. So it started 6 years ago. I think it was in London, right, Ellen, when we talked first time. Where do we come from? Why did we why did we start something like AWA? It's actually, I have to come up with that story because it explains a lot. So 6 years ago, we started like a big project in one of the carriers around, and we tried to put everything in software, integrated it into the NT-IT infrastructure, the legacy, and try to escape from the boundaries of the usual suspect legacy systems, and put everything into apps and try to liberate calling, messaging, etc. out of the carrier. So we did quite a steep learning curve. Sebastian, I don't know whether he's around or not, I think talked about it quite some time ago in this round. So he was in the team at that time. After we did that, it actually went back into the carrier. We started a company, it's called Automat, and we worked for same clients, but not from the inside, but more from the outside. So, and this year we started like a spin-off from Automat. That's why the name is actually AWA, because it says Automat Workshop A. So in Automat, we work for carriers and CPaaS providers and users of CPaaS infrastructures and carriers. So we know all the directions where actually programmable communication could end up, and from the client perspective, the consumption, from the provider's perspective, and from the carrier. So there's been some 6 years, and we actually, during that time, being in all the different positions, we kind of found that what is on the market is never perfect, but what is on the market actually comes with some flavors and some disadvantages, especially for the consumption party, right? The people who want to consume the CPaaS offering on the market. And therefore, this is basically the journey we did, right? Like we looked into the issue from all the different perspectives and thought we could do something. In Automat, we have a chapter that we call Workshop. So we actually do develop software and operate for money. That's factory, and the workshop is what we like to do and what we think is relevant. So and AWA is basically a spin-off from that workshop list of topics we work on. So this year we spun off AWA Network, went into the hackathons, and actually there is some history in the past. Here we pitched to some investors our ideas. I think, Ellen, you might remember that slide deck from one of your
2019. It feels a lot longer than just 2 years ago.
Yeah, possible. So we actually we try to go out there and say, okay, there's the Twilio and the carriers, and there's quite some space in between, but at the end of the day, it's basically all the same if you abstract it. So we thought that the universal API that would actually embrace everything would be nice for the consuming party, because you end up in a vendor lock-in. I think I explained it at that time 2 years ago, 2019. Well, that's a long time ago. So that there's a vendor lock-in, right? If you want to consume this, you might start with one of the usual suspects, Twilio, etc. And then you grow and you see that they do not provide everything you need, even if it was actually the most meaningful thing at the beginning. So there's a lock-in, it's geography, it's feature set, it's price, you name it, right? And it's quite difficult to actually get away from the one and move to another, or actually consume multiple parties at the same time, depending on your requirements, right? So they're not the same, definitely not, even if sometimes the APIs look pretty much the same. They provide different feature sets in different product areas, etc. So this lock-in actually sucks, especially when you grow, right? Then none of the providers, of course, do actually transparently show how the prices are actually created. So they're pretty much black box, and not just from the price, as well from the quality delivery. So like if, for instance, sending an SMS or having a breakout in calling, you never know where is the gateway, which path the SMS is actually sent, whether the SMS arrives, etc., etc. So it's a black box. You shoot, it's an API, right? You get it 200, and then this is it. So and the next step is then actually there are some features missing, even if the products from the user suspects are already quite broad. There are still some features missing, especially when you are coming from the technical perspective and you want to have a CLI, you want to get a feedback whether a message arrived, you want to know whether the audio quality on the other side is actually bearable, etc., etc. So there are actually things that are not there, and technically they're possible. So we guess they're on purpose, or maybe not needed, whatever the reason is why they're not offered. But there are a couple of features missing. And therefore, we actually started pitching and first complaining, and then trying to explain to ourselves and to some other people in the projects. We worked actually for some of the CPaaS providers, developed their SDKs, for instance, or improved the APIs. And then we discussed it with the engineers, and we were just coming saying, hey, you have to look from the consuming party perspective. Of course, there are limitations on the infrastructure, which you have, the integrated providers or the trunks, etc. But actually look through the eyes of the consuming party, right? And so we thought that the universal API that is actually bridging many different providers, the good guys, like from the feature set perspective, like the Twilios and Vonages and MessageBirds, etc. Yeah, Telnix. Yeah. You're on the list, right? And so there are the CPaaS providers that are already feature-wise quite far, and then there's some followers, and then the carriers, right? They most of the time don't even have APIs, which they are able to provide. And we always thought it would be interesting to actually have a universal API that would be able to combine them, and then would choose in real time for each and every transaction, whether it's messaging or calling or you name it, the most suitable provider, right, from that list. So this is year 2020. So we pitched this to people. We tried to explain, not doing it, but already working on the concept. And what you could do if you have a universal API, you could actually enrich it with some features that might be missing from the list underneath. So this was on the journey. So we went through it and tried to actually explain it to ourselves and then to people. And so there's quite a long journey in which we talked to a lot of people. So what we then started with, we did not go with an investor because we didn't like the conditions, to be honest. So we did it ourselves. So AWA was founded and we bootstrapped this year in 21, what we call CPaaS proxy. That's a universal API, I would say, that provides a RESTful and a streaming API that is pretty much identical to the Twilio API. And we started with SMS and wanted to show the potential of a meter level approach, right? That we would have an API that actually provides access to a list of providers on the market in a transparent way. So you see the link here, so everyone who is interested can just go there and read through it. And so this is actually the first thing we've done. to prove that it's not just the idea, but that we can actually do it. So this is done. So first point, CPaaS proxy, providing least cost SMS delivery using a dozen CPaaS providers. I'll show you the list in a second. And carriers, and just sending SMS via standard or Twilio compatible API. And what we're working on at the moment is basically preference modeling. That means that the user, the consuming party of the API, is basically able to add preferences like, give me the cheapest as the easiest, right? Everyone talks about the price, but as we know from our projects, and the reality is, like, take a use case, you actually pay a couple of bucks to get people to the App Store, download your app, and then you want to make them register, right? You do a second factor for registration, which is an SMS, for instance, and the SMS does not arrive, right? So you waste quite some money on this if it doesn't arrive, and the person you spend money on might never come back because the registration didn't work. So it's quite a good example. It's just an example that you might want to not optimize the price for the second factor, the SMS that sends the code, right? But you might want to say, you know what, give me the highest probability that the SMS actually arrives. So technically that means that you want to, ideally, in an ideal world, you would get the provider of the number, right? And you could actually access that provider directly, because you know if you send the SMS via that provider directly, the SMS would actually arrive. Of course, that's not always possible. So we actually optimize the number of hops the SMS takes, and we try to optimize to choose the optimal path for delivery quality. So of course, it's then a little bit more expensive because this is not gray route. This is not going via aggregators with blended prices, etc. But basically, if you could model, say, give me the cheapest, but give me the highest quality and then it's cheapest, then you would actually have more options, right? So, and there's not only the delivery quality, there are other arguments and parameters you could actually bring in here. So we're doing this at the moment. That needs some, let's say, thinking about how to actually provide this feature, right? You could actually just put it into the API, but you could actually come up with maybe some other options to model it that you could actually give to the developers, that they would be able to say, give me CLI, the smallest number of hops the SMS goes, and then the cheapest, etc., etc. So
I mean, Cinch have a solution where they just have like a number of categories of quality of service, and then through the API you just sign up to that. So if deliverability is the key, then you sign up to that particular sort of implementation of the API, or if you just care of as long as it gets there at some point, we're not so bothered. So did you think about that?
Yeah, it's a similar approach. The difference here is that we actually integrate quite a long list of providers that might not give us the option.
Gotcha.
So we have to it's not that we invent the feature, but in our approach to actually integrate a long list, a longer list of different providers, of course, we have to deal with how to find out actually whether we can offer this in our catalog, right? So that's basically the challenge here. Mm-hmm. And so this is what we're actually on at the moment. And the next steps will be then voice and DIDs, as well, again, with preferences, right? And as soon as we have then messaging, voice, and DIDs, we could as well, at the end of the day, support complex scenarios. And again, it's like we're not trying to be a CPaaS provider. We're just trying to be like a meter level where we integrate everyone, right? Or many different providers to provide something where you don't have to log in, right? So the basic idea is, again, not to become a CPaaS provider in the first place, but to actually integrate and provide some additional, like some add-on feature to the consuming party that you don't have to choose one of the providers, but you can actually go via standard interfaces and then get an advantage out of this, which needs to be proven still, but that's the idea.
Yep, no, makes a lot of sense, because I like this because of just the dollars that have been spent by Twilio in terms of marketing. People just take the easiest approach, and I think trying to provide this sort of universal API, opens up part of the developer community to realize, the other options in terms of price performance. So I think this plays an important role across the different buyers and breaking through some of the sort of, I guess, laziness barrier in terms of, well, Twilio is the answer. What's the question?
Yeah, you might even, because at the beginning you get some, like in Berlin, we're in Berlin, right? And Berlin based. And in Berlin, we have quite some startups that actually scale, and they already see think of Delivery Hero, right? One of the biggest.
Oh, yes. Yep.
Food delivery and other delivery guys, and they send quite a lot of SMS, right? And at the beginning of their journey, it's not so important, right?
Yeah.
And now they see that in geography and price and other things, they actually get stuck.
Yes.
They don't really get what they want and what they need, and it's quite difficult for them to get away from, the one provider they've chosen at the very beginning, and then now they use them, spend a lot of money on it, but it's actually not just the money. They have a lot of other issues with it. So they're like, we do have in our network over here, we have quite some people listening to it, let's say that way. What we can, like the way we are at the moment discussing it, is that we can provide it as a platform. So the whole thing is set up on AWS, containerized, in quite a stable fashion. So it can be proxy as a service. You can bring your own provider. So this is the second one, and then we can actually put it on any can use our stack because it's containerized as well on like private or hybrid situations where, for instance, carriers would only use it to actually expose their different solutions to a public or a private party. So we're still working on basically the different ways of how to expose it. The product you see in the internet is, I would say, is a mixture between 1 and 2, or you can do both with it. So we already allow people to sign up and actually test around with it. And there is what we call Twilio proxy feature. You can actually replace the path and then do a simulation and find out whether our integrated catalog is cheaper than your Twilio conditions. It's kind of hacky, but it's on the website, so it's quite nice. Check it out if you want. So if you're know some people who use Twilio, then actually this is some fun feature. It's gone that way. So this is where on this, it's more from the DevOps perspective, like how we automate. It's the whole thing is fully automated, so it's easy for us to actually choose on it. At the moment, it runs on AWS in Frankfurt, and from there we go basically. This is the catalog, right? On the right hand side, you see the icons, and you don't have to actually register to the platform to already use some of the stuff. So no need to register. But if you register, you can actually get some more features. I might not go through this. It's if anyone from the audience is interested in it, just reach out for us, or just go to the website and check it out, because basically it's all described. There's quite a extensive technical description of the API reference. So, and as you see here, we actually have quite some people on it. You see there is T-Mobile, right? That's a carrier integration. We on purpose did this. First of all, of course, it's basically the region. So, but we wanted it to integrate SMPP trunks directly, so we can not just use other people's API and then expose a unified API, but we can actually integrate as well trunks infrastructures directly, and therefore there is a carrier already integrated, and the AWS SMS service. So this is the list actually we're discussing with projects we are already in here, extended lists, and it takes us just a couple of days to integrate other providers or SMPP trunks, for the time being SMPP, because we do SMS for in the first phase. Yeah, that's basically that's basically the catalog you get access. In the hack we did, the TEDx, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, right? We actually, the team who won is doing like a simulation. So they created 2 different marketing campaigns. They automated, or they generated mobile numbers, like on a global scale, like 700 and 1500, if I remember right.
Yeah.
And then they used our simulation API, so they did not send the SMS, but they generated mobile numbers, and then they simulated sending them, getting access on our price lists from the different providers, and proving, or actually they wanted to prove us wrong, but then at the end of the day, it wasn't, of course, so difficult. If you actually have a catalog integrated, then and you every time send the cheapest way, of course, then this is at the end of the day the cheapest way. And of course, if you have now a very well negotiated price list with one of the providers, that might be then a different way. But then you can use what I described. You can use your price list integrated. We have a fully automated integration of your own pricing information, and then you could actually look at the simulation API and find out whether using the meter level approach, the proxy, is actually cheaper in this case. Yeah. So that was quite interesting. The guys visualized it. So they did have 2 different number sets, used the simulation APIs, and then they visualized the actual price of the campaign, sending an SMS to each of the numbers in their generated list. And that, of course, depends on in which directions you send, into which geography you send the SMS, etc. So this picture is just an example, but they had 2 pictures, and in each of the pictures, the meter level approach was the cheapest, at least. So, and there are quite some questions with our little adventure here. First of all, we don't have real load on the system, so we make a decision for each and every transaction. So if we have many users and they send their load via us, then of course technically it's quite a challenge to really do this decision on each and every SMS you send or call you connect, whatever, right? So this is something we actually heavily work on, that we are able to do this real-time decision and actually send the SMS, or for the time being the SMS, the best path available, right? So this is quite some computing. The second question is, can, and if so, will CPaaS providers block the proxy feature? We're transparent, so the provider might not actually realize, but at the end of the day, if that hurts the provider, then they might find ways to block us, and then basically we need to get around this, or partner with a provider in a positive way. Let's say that way. Since we don't want to compete with CPaaS providers at all. Mm-hmm. The question is whether the users would understand the advantage, right? Yeah, not proven yet. And to be honest, we have not really decided on a business model. We have thought about it, what transaction fee or platform fee, like a license, but we do this because we can do it and we think it's an interesting thing. And since it's bootstrapped, so it's our own money, we actually are still in a position to not discuss this with someone who forces us to already come up with a business model. So we make enough money with the projects we do that we don't have to already have a business model on the platform level. Yeah. That's it, actually. 25 minutes is longer, right?
Well, this is perfect time, and that was a great overview and very open and honest explanation around what you're delivering, why you're delivering it, and it's a journey. You're not trying to say, here's a business model, it's great, use us. There's a need we perceive from all the clients we're working with in the market, and you're exploring how best to fulfill that need. So no, that's great. Do we have any questions from the audience, please?
I don't have a question, but I have a compliment, Marty. You know, we don't do enough fundamental work anymore at our level. So I really, you know, really love to see what you're doing. It's great. Keep it up.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Thomas.
Thanks.
Go for it, Dalian. Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute. There you go.
Yeah. Marten, the concept is very nice. So I like this routing billing from a service provider perspective. Okay. For example, the way I see it is we are a small service provider. We don't have the ability to build our own CPaaS, right? But instead, we can use AWA as a proxy and have our providers, and then offer the APIs to the customers. So this facilitates providers like us, you know, to be another player among Twilio, Telnix, OneEdge, that kind of stuff. But I am little puzzled when you said you are thinking from the consumer perspective. So it is like snatching away our business. Right. So here David is also there. I don't know what his reaction would be. So I was a little shocked to hear that, but you know, this is my concept, because most of us are providers or technologies, something like that. So that is something you can think about.
That's actually, first of all, I think the use cases I explained, I call it use cases, but this is the way how we, at the moment, the projects we do, they're all with carriers who are interested to do exactly what you just said, right? So we fund the whole thing out of projects we do with carriers, right? Or with some smaller CPaaS providers who would like to catch up. Because for them it's difficult. We have a streaming API and we have a REST API that is basically pretty much the same as Twilio. So if you even have a client that uses Twilio, but doesn't get what Twilio in the region, for instance, like there's no Twilio in the region, or it's too expensive in the region. So this is basically, that's why if I say, I think from the consuming party, then only that the consuming party is a developer in a region that might not get from the usual suspect CPaaS providers that provide all their stuff what they need. And therefore, for us, it's basically where we come from, because we actually developed applications using those APIs and helped other people to do so. And one of the three ways of providing what we do is exactly what you described. This is the third one I had on the list, right? And this is what we already do. So this is the easiest way for us, right? Because there are people that are saying, hey, we don't have a modern API in front of our infrastructures. So if it's easy for you to actually provide this for us and even give us access to a longer list of others, which we can then have in an API provided, that we can deploy this easily. So this is for us the easiest way on the market, to be honest. As providing the platform ourselves to a free market. It's like, hey guys, to be honest, we don't have any marketing, but our marketing budget is Ellen, to be honest. This is our marketing budget, right? So this is how much we go with marketing. So you just described our easiest use case, because it's very natural for us to do this, right? Yeah. To work with people who do not expose their infrastructures via modern APIs, and then it's very easy to do this with us. So that was already a pitch, right? Sorry for that. I didn't want to do that, but you asked the question.
David, do you have a comment or a question?
Yeah, I guess, I mean, this makes a lot of sense. In fact, I mean, our initial Twexit API was very much based on the same concept of being able to easily roll off of Twilio. I mean, SMS is one thing. Have you started to explore the voice side, and have you run into any bumps in the road in terms of providing an abstraction that works across multiple providers?
Oh yes, there are lots of bumps on the road, to be honest, because the providers provide their obviously very similar products in a very different way if you look into the details, right? So like what's easy is to integrate SMPP or zip trunking, right? That's easy because it's everyone knows how it works. Like, or let's say the people who deal with it knows how it works. Yes, exactly. And but if you use APIs from the providers, right, then you see that actually the devil is in the details. So yes, we actually do spend quite some time on integrating different providers in a way that we can expose it via like a universal way. And still we have to transform a lot, right? There is like in syntax and semantic, there's quite some differences, and especially doing this in a very fast fashion, because let's say there's someone coming and want to set up a call, and then the call setup time should not be more than, let's say, a few seconds, right? Because this is what you're used to. And so we have to do the job in a few seconds. The same with SMS. If someone wants to kick off a campaign and sends 100,000 SMS, right? Then it should be like executed in a let's say good enough fashion. Or if you want to send an SMS for like a second factor, then the SMS should not arrive next day, right? But it should arrive as like in a very short period of time. So, and this is really different because you usually don't get feedback from the providers. This is one of the bumps, right? You really need a feedback, for instance, whether it's sent. Like the API just gives you feedback, nothing went wrong. But that actually does not translate into there is a decent call ongoing, right? Or the SMS has arrived. So, and where
a call is easier than SMS. And SMS is difficult, right? Because ultimately the FAR operator is usually giving you a fake DLR. And telling you, okay, we sent the message onward, and ultimately they're doing that because they're trying to manage spam. So you sort of run into that issue.
A quite interesting topic. We have a lot of information about, well, the usual suspect paths the SMS would go. So we try to bring light into the jungle of, this hidden market, because many people are using aggregators or cheap paths, right? And then the
gray routes,
gray routes, and the prices are blended. So you could actually try to integrate some of the, let's say, carriers who have global deals, right? And then you try to you look up the number and the provider, and you try to minimize the number of hops. And if you minimize the number of hops, you might be more expensive than the gray routes, right? But if the consumers, like the consuming party, is willing to pay that little extra, right? Then you could actually offer a better quality here. It's possible. So, and we have invested quite some effort into optimizing this and getting closer to an automated way to actually minimize the number of hops. That's how we call it internally. To get as close as possible to the actually delivering party. And that of course is maybe not in the direct interest of the CPaaS providers who try to be, let's say, who try to provide it with a decent price but optimize their internal margin, which I can understand, but of course it does not always improve the quality, right?
Okay, so we have a couple more questions. I can see Kalyan has his hand raised, but we have one in the chat from Amit. So on the chat, he is asking, who's in charge of lawful interception in the case of SMS and voice in your model? Is it CPaaS players or AWA? And asks maybe, he could expand the question into GDPR as well.
Yeah, we actually at the moment dealing with the legal setup with a contract. That's why we do beta at the moment. So we do not provide this for money. And the idea basically is not that we will not become a CPaaS provider or communication service provider. So this is ongoing. I cannot give you like a final answer. We do it on behalf of the others. That's our favorite model, that We actually just give you an API that gives you access to those providers. And at the end of the day, for each and every transaction that is going via a special provider, you would actually then need to use that provider. But that's not solved yet. We are on it.